Welcome to the Bullish Drive podcast, where we explore the realms of faith, mental performance, and personal testimonies through conversations with high-level performers. Join us as we extract valuable insights from their experiences to supercharge your pursuit of peak performance. This is the Bullish Drive podcast. What's up, fam, and welcome back to the Bullish Drive podcast. And I've played a handful of sports, starting with the exhilarating game of t-ball to soccer in high school, introducing rugby into my repertoire, and for a short season, I participated in combat sports, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. While many sports allows you the opportunity to work with others on a team, share the load, and build that trust, martial arts rests on your abilities and yours alone. It's a unique sport, and the amount of effort you put into training can be seen unfiltered when competition happens. However, there is a different mindset that comes from it. There's no participation award. There's a clear winner and loser, and there is the expectation of accepting that outcome. So with so much weight riding on your performance and yours alone, how do you manage situations that no longer go in your favor? Well, our guest today demonstrates this next mental skill beautifully as he discusses his transition from the medical world to the fighting world. Here's a quick breakdown. You know, when you go to a museum, you look at all the artwork in their beautiful frames? Well, museums will pay someone hundreds of dollars to pick out specific frames for the artwork. And the reason is because the frame sets the stage and the feeling for the artwork inside. This is the idea behind the mental skill we call reframing. Now, reframing is a psychological technique aimed at altering how individuals perceive and interpret situations, thoughts, or experiences. By encouraging a shift in perspective and the consideration of alternative viewpoints, reframing helps individuals reevaluate and reframe challenging circumstances in a more positive or constructive light. Now, this approach, often used in cognitive behavioral therapy, facilitates emotional regulation, stress reduction, improved coping skills, enhanced problem-solving abilities, and an overall sense of well-being. Research shows that reframing empowers individuals to manage emotions, reduce stress, cultivate resilience, and develop adaptive responses to life's adversities, contributing to enhanced mental and emotional wellness. And research substantiates the efficacy of reframing in promoting mental and emotional well-being. It provides individuals with a tool to regulate emotions, manage stress, and cultivate resilience by altering their perception of challenging situations. Reframing encourages a positive outlook, better coping strategies, and creative problem solving, ultimately fostering a more adaptive and healthier approach to navigating life's complexities. However, it's essential to recognize that reframing might not be a one-size-fits-all solution, and its effectiveness can vary depending on the individual and the context, highlighting the importance of personalized guidance from a mental performance coach. The way we frame our lives can have its roots on various aspects, from where we were born to who we look up to as role models, the videos we view on the daily, or the publications we read. One major step in regaining control over our lives is learning how to do the reframing ourselves. Like in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there is an answer for everything. If you can calm your mind long enough to solve the problem, you can find the solution. See, life is a game of chess, and it takes a player's ability to understand the rules of the game and shift their mindset and perspective to achieve the victory. Just like in Romans 12:2, reminding us not to conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds, we are required to shift our mindsets from what the world may attempt to instill in us. The boy David, when battling Goliath, was the only person on the battlefield that referred to the giant as simply Goliath. David did not see a giant, but an obstacle. An obstacle similar to the bears and the lions he had defeated many times before as a shepherd watching his flock. In order to achieve peak performance, we are required to renew our minds, remove the worldly names given to the obstacles before us, and reframe them to achieve our goals. Now, I am incredibly honored and excited to introduce the highest ranked Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Minnesota, who owns a massive gym in Rochester, my former MMA coach, Mario Roberto. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks again, James. Thanks for having me over on the podcast. It's a pleasure to talk to you after all those years. And I have a pretty, I would say, call it a different journey, because I was never planning on doing what I do for a living. It was simply a matter of luck or accidents, should I say. I was always had a more of an academic career in mind. So I actually went to medical school in Brazil. I was, graduated, I have an MD degree. And during that process of my childhood, early youth, and during medical school, I was competing actively in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and then later on in MMA. And mind you, this is, when I was competing in MMA, it was 97, 98. So it wasn't really mixed martial arts. It was no holds barred is what we call it. Fortitude is the word in Portuguese. And I always had a passion for those things. And I always had a passion for sharing that with others. And once I moved to the US, I had a window of opportunity here where until I got certified to practice medicine and apply for residency programs in the US, I needed to find something to do. So I started teaching, started coaching. And as I did that, I realized all of a sudden that I really like this lifestyle. It's a great lifestyle, and I'm really blessed. I'm one of, very few people can really say they do what they love for a living. And on my nights off, I got nights off from the gym now. The business has grown. I got other instructors. What do I find myself doing? I find myself driving to the gym and being on the mats as a student, because that's where my friends are. I'm really blessed. And that's basically my journey. So I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since 1989. So it's been a while. I've been a black belt now for 25 years. It was just July 14 was my black belt anniversary. So I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu is all I know. It's more than what I do. It's who I am in a lot of ways. And now, the opportunity to coach and share some of those, those experiences is awesome, man. It's the dream.
I love just hearing how you just fell into this opportunity to do what you love to do, and that's we talk about it all the time, but I think a lot of people get in this fixed mindset where they're like, oh, but this is just how life is. Like, I have to do this 9-to-5 job. I have to wake up early and I have to do these things. There's a lot of motivation and driving factors you would have to work in yourself to keep driving towards your dream. How does that intertwine with like your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey and just the confidence in being able to follow through with that motivation?
I think for starters, what I see is like, you got to have enthusiasm in your life for everything that you do. It doesn't matter if you're doing, because we all go through phases in our lives where we're not living the dream, man. When you start, you're supposed to go through some hardship. Everybody goes through times in their lives where they hate it. And they hate the times, and then they end up hating themselves. I try to avoid that attitude. And I've been through quite a lot of, I've been through a very bad divorce. I've been through some losses in my life, a tough childhood. But I always made the decision to be enthusiastic about what I'm going through. And instead of seeing as a challenge that it's unsurmountable, I'm seeing this as an opportunity that was placed in my life for me to turn into a better person, to develop myself. And I'm telling you right now that if you're an enthusiastic person, that is just contagious. And if you really, it doesn't matter what you're doing. A lot of people don't do that, but I don't know that, but I drove a propane truck. I delivered a propane truck for propane for 1 year.
Oh,
that's not, that's usually something that people look at like, oh my God, that's a menial job. Well, you have you're a doctor. How are you pissed that you're doing this? I wasn't pissed, man. I was focused on being the best propane driver in Southeast Minnesota. And then I hope to be the best propane driver in the world if time had allowed me to be that. So it's all about life is, 95%, maybe 5% is what happens to you, and 95% is how you adapt to that. It's how you face those things, how you approach it. So 95% is perspective, really. So you can be dealt all kinds of crazy cards. It's what you do with them that matters the most. And I think that's a good thing that has been a good principle, a good steward in my journey so far.
Yeah. How is the balance between outcome versus process been? Like, because I know a lot of people can get kind of tunnel visioned on the outcome of their journeys. And when the outcome doesn't come fast enough, like on their own time, they drop it. They go to something else that feels like that outcome will come faster. So how have you balanced that out to maintain laser focus on the process that you're in and keeping that mindset?
I think a lot of it is understanding that you're really not entitled to anything in this world, right? You got to go out and get it. And if you are a go-getter, the first thing that you got to get it out of your mind is this, this thought of like instant gratification, right? We live in a society where we are conditioned for instant gratification. We hear a beep on our phones and I'm going to check it to see because I got a like on my Instagram. I'm hungry. I can drive maybe a block and get a burger at McDonald's. You got to detach yourself from this culture. There's a reason. I believe, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I believe there's a reason why people are developing and conditioning us for those responses. And if you accept that conditioning that life imposes on you, you are bound to live an average lifestyle, being an average person, and you're going to feel cheated out of your accomplishments. So you got to take a broader view of things and look at it. Okay, it's all about the process. Even if you don't get to the outcome that you had in your mind. Let's say, for example, I wanted to play at the NBA, right? I'm 6'1". It's not going to happen. Okay. I could have dedicated my whole life to train basketball the way I dedicated my life to fighting, and I still wouldn't be able to make it. But if that was my true goal and my true passion, I would have, through that process of pursuing that dream, gotten way better at basketball, maybe ending up playing in a semi-pro team somewhere. Maybe I didn't even make it to a semi-pro team, but I got in better shape. I made a lot of friends and connections. Maybe I found a place for me in a managerial position to be involved with the game that I love. So there's a lot of opportunities. But if you just focus on, I want this and I'm entitled to this, and this is what's going to happen, life is not meant to be fair. So you got to understand there's a process to go through, and understand that a lot of times, even if you do everything right, and this is a common thing in fighting. I have a couple of students that did everything right in their careers and did not end up with their end goal. That's okay, man. You went through that journey, and at the end of life, and there are studies about this, the regrets that you have are usually related to the things you have not done, not the things you have done. So okay, you're gonna run into a few walls. Who cares? Just understand the process is a long thing. Don't get fed into this instant gratification machine where you want to get your likes, you want to get your snacks. Understand the long road. Get in there. Even if you fail at your desired outcome, you're still going to be somewhere around that, right? They say, there's always those simple sayings, like, well, if you shoot at the moon, because if you miss, you're going to be among stars still. Which is completely astronomically incorrect, but you get the picture. If you are going for a high-end goal, you're going to get a lot out of it, even if you fail. If you go for a low-end goal, even if you achieve it, okay, so what? You did something that's very average and, not really, doesn't inspire anybody. And be enthusiastic. Always. Have a smile on your face, be a go-getter.
100%. I love that. It's that energy that you put into it, right? And that sets up the foundations for the experience in general. When you're talking about some of the students that didn't make the outcome, something that stuck out to me is that you were there to at least reset their mindset or help them stay focused. And then you mentioned about how culture is kind of like leveraging us to be more impulsive, let's say, or lower our patience or expectations. How important is it for community, and how does a young athlete place themselves in the best community that can help them achieve what they're looking for?
So as an athlete, the first thing I would do is to understand that a good coach is not necessarily going to be your best friend. It's just the way it is, because there are coaches that will cater, and we live in a commercial society, right? So there are coaches that will cater to you to make you feel good, to inflate your ego. And that's not necessarily the coach that's going to bring you to your potential. I always tell my students, I try to be as good a coach to you guys as I can be. Unfortunately, that means that I'm not going to coach you to feel better about yourself. I'm coaching you to be better. And those are, at times, they're very different things. You see this with parenting, and a lot of parents want to be friends. Oh, I'm going to give you the candy anytime you want. I want you to love me. Coaches are very similar. A coach-student relationship is a very, very much a parental relationship in some levels, at the very least, a dysfunctional older brother in my case. And so I got to make sure that I'm telling those guys, I'm separating the fact that, I want to be liked by this person. I want to build a rapport. No, what is my job? To get that person to live their fullest potential, to the extent that I can help them do that, right? So a lot of times it's hey man, you got to call me when you want to cheat on your meal, because otherwise your weight cut is going to go to hell. Hey, you're being lazy. Oh, you don't want to fight on this weight. that's not the path. I know this weight is easier for you. We have some fighters that choose to fight at a higher weight, 170 versus 155, right? Nobody wants to be 155, but it's a better decision for your career. Sometimes you got to have some hard words and some harsh realities. But you're the coach. That's your purpose, is to be that interface, to give a realistic outlook with a positive attitude, right? Okay, this is the harsh reality. This is how we're going to tackle it, so you get your best result. And you, as an athlete, you got to strive to find somebody that communicates with you on that level, somebody that doesn't, for lack of a better term, blow smoke and try to tell you all these nice things that you want to hear. What you want to hear, if you are feeling comfortable with your coach at all times, it's great to feel good. You're interfacing and everything is shiny and beautiful, and we never argue, but you're in the comfort zone where everything is comfortable, but nothing grows.
Right.
So growth, there's going to be some hardship. There's going to be some attrition in between the coach and the athlete. That's to be welcome, in my view. That's what it is. And I don't want to be just like a parent. I don't believe that your parent should be your best friend. Could be, that's great. More important, it has to fulfill the role of a parent. Other people can fulfill the role of best friend. Parent, only one, right? I don't want to fulfill the role of a best friend to my athletes. I want to be first and foremost their coach. Yeah. If I can be a coach and friend, man, that's the Salt Bay on top of the steak, great. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. Then be the coach. And I lost a lot of students throughout the years for being honest. Yeah. Coach, do you believe I can make it to the UFC? No. Get a job. Yeah. I mean, it's you want to facilitate dreams and incentivize dreams, but you got to be a realistic guy at the same time,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, time's our greatest asset, you know what I mean? And just like money, we can spend it poorly, Yeah. So I love how you said that. And there's definitely a level of humility and accountability required of an athlete when they're going to build and grow. Like you said, in order to grow, there has to be some sort of discomfort, that has to be accepted. Now, are you born a humble dude, and accountable, or is that something you developed?
I wouldn't call myself humble as one characteristic that I wouldn't, if you're performing at any level of athletics at any given time, that's a high level of athletics. It's a very fine balance between humble and confidence. Right. And, you have to almost have a arrogant confidence that's narrow to your field of operation. When you walk in there, especially in combat sports, you got to believe I am the best. Right. Because if you don't believe that to begin with, if you say I am not the best, you're right, whether you're right or wrong. You know what I mean? So if you don't believe it first, how can you materialize? How can you make that mental image work for you? It's not going to work. Okay. Right. So even if you are the best, if you have second thoughts about that, you're not going to be the best. So it's a fine balance with that. But no, I was actually, I went through a very hard childhood in my life, and I was very blessed that I was a very nerdy kid, and I got access to the right books at the right time. And I basically did my whole growth, my whole upbringing, pretty much, I would like to say, by myself. So my moral upbringing, my values, my philosophy of life were developed from reading philosophers. And as a nerdy kid, and a kid that really, I didn't even want to play group sports because I wasn't an achiever in group sports. So I avoided that. School breaks, I didn't want to be bullied. So where would I go? To the library and read? And at the time, I was lucky enough to get into a lot of stoicism as a kid, and simplified versions of it, but enough that nowadays it's so popular. Back then it wasn't. Where I started understanding a couple of values, it gave me discipline. And it's interesting that I was just watching a video, and somebody said there are studies that people that go through some sort of childhood hardship, there's a level to that, a correlation with a level of hardship and outcome in life. And at one point, that hardship, like that trauma, abuse, whatever it is that you meet, it increases your performance later on in life, which is kind of a understandable phenomena. I'm not saying it's a desirable phenomena by any means.
Right.
You don't want to go through that. When I have a kid, he's going to be in a much more, fostering environment than I was. But some hardship in life, usually the output is like, if people don't break, they become hard and they become focused and they understand values more. They become more thankful for what they have. And I think that's what happened with me. Of course, it comes to a breaking point where the abuse is too much and performance goes downhill and you end up people with drugs or whatever it is. But I was blessed in that sense that I end up in a good path. And I always understood it. I'm not good at many things, but I'm good at putting myself through a lot of hard work and not complaining. So I can withstand a whole amount of pain, be it emotional, physical, or mental, and grind through that forever. And if you have that characteristic and you tie that in putting work in the right areas of your life, you can go through a lot. You can get through an academic program that's a difficult program. You can get through an athletic career, and do well. You can do a lot with the power of your mind. It's really untapped for most people. But the programming is comfort. It's so well established now that we're losing a lot of that. People have to come to somebody like you, a specialist in the area, to cultivate that. Versus if you were, where we don't have soft people, man. If you go to, and I've traveled the world, if you go to Africa out there, middle of nowhere, where people have to, run 15 miles in a row to hunt for the day. And if you don't make that kill, you don't get to eat that day. There's no soft people. There's nobody stopping and saying my feet hurt, but now we have so much comfort in our Western civilization that men specifically are getting weak. I think even the females are not being nearly as affected. You see a lot of stronger women now because men are becoming so weak. I think they're trying to fulfill that role, so we need to step up as athletes and as men and start to somehow cultivate that warrior mentality, whatever you want to call it, that hard, being a hard person, being a person of resilience, of determination.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many jokes right now about the comparison to like even the early 2000s, what kids used to do outside and what kids do now. Like kids fell out of trees and they'd come back and parents had to get upset at them because they're like, oh, I'm fine. But now like an iPad breaks and they're in tears. You know what I mean?
BB gun, fights, and not a big deal. I'm like, really? Just imagine if your kid had a BB gun nowadays, you'd be like freaking out, So things change, and I think obviously there are good things about that, there are bad things about that. But overall, one thing that I've observed is it's really hard for us, especially nowadays, to find an athlete that walks in here and has that mindset. And I'll tell you one more observation, completely empirically here. But I feel that the urbanites versus the farm kids, it's a completely different view. When you get somebody that has to wake up and especially dairy farmers, which is a routine, you have to wake up. There are no days off. There's no holiday. You got to milk that cow, man. And it has to happen. You have an approach to hardship that's different. That doesn't mean you get some people that are wired different. I came from an affluent family, and I got that wired somehow, some way through circumstances. So it's not a absolute rule, but overall, I would say the more urban the kid, the more sheltered that person is, the less of a mental preparation they will have, a mental background they will have to perform well in athletics. You will definitely need that kid to pursue training with somebody like you to rewire the whole thing so they can get the most out of their career, out of their mind, inside and outside of the mats or ring or pool, whatever it is,
Yeah, what I think I'm hearing is consistency, right? Consistency of doing these things over and over and over again, so your body and your mind gets used to it. I'm definitely in the same camp as you when it comes to that shift that's happening, and that's the reason why I'm very passionate about helping the next generation. Like we got to build up the next generation.
We need that. We need figures that stand up, and I get asked that a lot because it's like, oh man, how do you build? The number one, I'm not sure about you, but being in the fighting business, the number one thing I get asked when it comes to the mental game is like, oh, how do I build mental toughness? Because most people lack it. And I was just having this conversation with a couple of students here, and I said, man, if I had a dime for every time somebody tells me, you don't know me, man, when push comes to shove, when that situation comes, when a big time fight comes, or when I'm in a fight, man, I see red, I'm going to perform, you have no idea. No. You have no idea what it takes,
Right.
and you don't understand, like, mental toughness is a matter of habit, in my opinion. So I was telling them that every day you have a multitude of actions that seem very small to you, but they have a big repercussion because they're habit forming.
Yep.
So you wake up, you go out there, what do? You go there, brush your teeth, okay? You're supposed to brush your teeth for 2 minutes. You know that, but you know what? You're a little tired. You just want to do it for 30 seconds, and you say, okay. So that was a fork on the road. So at that point in your life, you had two decisions: take the easy route or take the right route, and you chose the easy route.
Yep.
All right, not a big deal, right? Then you go and you take and then do I flush and lower the toilet seat? And you go, no, I don't really want to do that. I was like, oh, you go in the shower. Oh, do I need to wash my hair today, or whatever it is? Like, life is a continuum of smaller branches on the road where you always have two options: do I do the right thing, and do I do the easy thing? They are rarely the same.
Right.
Rarely they're the same. So it's a binary formula, and by constantly choosing and skipping on the small things, you're creating a pattern. What makes you think, if you're willing to choose the easy path on something as small as an extra minute and a half on the toothbrush, that when push comes to shove and we have pain, physical, mental, emotional involved, that you're going to make the right path, the right choice? You're not. This thing is a habit, man. So I tell them, okay, start with the small stuff. Make yourself do something hard. Wake up. What do you don't want to do in the morning? Oh, I don't want to exercise in the morning. I'm lazy. Okay, then wake up and do 50 push-ups. Do that for 2.5 weeks. See how it feels. Okay, all of a sudden, okay, I'm good with those push-ups. Okay, what you would really hate? Well, I really hate after those push-ups to take a cold shower. That would be terrible. Okay, how about introduce a cold shower in your life? Start with small changes that are getting you. It's just like you said, there has to be discomfort to have progress in life with anything. It doesn't have to be permanent damage to your body, but there has to be a degree of pain. If you go to the gym and you see all those guys who are going to the gym out there, and you're doing the same set, they carry out their little card that was issued by their personal trainer 3 years ago, and they have the same poundage and the same number of reps, and you're going through the same program every day. What are you doing? Like, you got to get out of that comfort zone. So build a habit of, you want to build mental toughness. I always tell my students, build a habit with it. Start with a small, and then move on to the bigger stuff. And then we can talk about what you can do to, get to that level.
Yeah. Oh man, that whole segment right there was so good. I appreciate that insight,
it.
man.
No, thanks.
Yeah. I think I just heard a interview of Kobe Bryant talking about something very similar. It's just those little like habits, those little choices you make. And at the end of the day, now you've just had a whole day of choosing, like you said, the easy route out. And now you've built that behavior into your schedule. No, that's so good. Something that happens a lot when I'm meeting new clients is, I get a lot of angry clients. I got a lot of clients that come that are just angry. They're angry because they didn't get opportunities. They're angry, and so they let it out on sports. Where does anger fit in developing into high level athletic competition? What you do?
There's a place for it. I think, especially when it comes to sports, there's a place to it at some point when it comes to combative sports, right? But I think the type of anger that we talk about, you briefly mentioned, there are two types, right? First is we have a sign at the entrance of our gym that says nobody owes you anything. And there's this anger that we develop by getting the society softer and softer, that I feel like, I didn't get what I want, it's somebody else's fault. Right?
Yeah.
And that anger, of that entitlement-based anger, I think this needs to just be wiped off the face of the planet. I think, to me, that's the worst. I came in here, and I'm not bragging, but I came in here to the United States with I gave up a pretty successful career as an MD in Brazil. I had a very good pathway. I came in here to start anew. And all my possessions I had were 2 suitcases. Okay. I came in here, I didn't come in here with my nose up thinking, oh my God, man, I'm an immigrant, like, I deserve this, I deserve that. People need to adapt to my ways. I put my nose to the ground. I was teaching at a gym before you came to our gym. I was in a different location that was really rough. I measured the temperature on the mats one winter here, 36 degrees on the mats, and I didn't even have the money. Like, I was so broke. I made $60 on the first month of business, $60 on the first month.
Dang.
Okay. And I didn't make any money in the first 3 years. And I didn't even have enough money to buy a bike to go from my place to the gym. And my thought process could be, well, life is so unfair. Look at this, the big twist of fate, where I go from being in a comfortable house. My house in Brazil had a swimming pool with an artificial waterfall in it, and here I am having to walk through Minnesota winters. One or two options. You face that as, what, I was enthusiastic about that. Man, that's great. What, God is great, gives me the opportunity here to go through this hardship, and this is going to make me so much better, so much tougher. So stop with the whining about, my God, I didn't get what I want. Okay, you got hardship in your life. I mean, rise up to the occasion, welcome it, because hardship comes to either break you or to make your shoulders broader.
That's right.
So weight on your shoulders, it can do one or two things. All it is, again, 5% reality, 95% approach to it. Approach it with a good intent.
Yeah.
That being said, in combative sports, it's a very interesting thing, because a lot of people are exercising their demons. And I'm sure this is true in more than just combative sports, but combative sports, because of the nature that you're actually physically engaging with another human being, a lot of time you have childhood trauma, anger towards being bullied, from being bullied and whatnot. And at first, I think that's a good channel to put that anger to, because that anger, eventually it's going to go somewhere, right? So if you can channel it to athletics, it's good. Yeah. However, once you got to the violent application of combative sports, you understand that when it comes to competing, there is no room for emotion, right? So when you are at that performance stage, it's the complexity of combat sports did not allow you to be emotional. Very interesting thing. If you notice, powerlifting versus Olympic weightlifting, right? You watch a powerlifter walk up to the bar.
Yeah.
What does he do? He will slap himself and he will like yell and go, ah! And then he will go in there and pull. It's a very guttural, it's a very emotional, it's a very fight or flight driven mechanism. Why is that? Okay. First, because it's a very simplistic motion, right? A deadlift, not saying it's not complex in itself, but compared to an Olympic weightlift. Then you look at the Olympic weightlifters. There's no slapping. They approach the bar in silence. They're approaching the bar and trying to calm their minds. Because when you go into that fight or flight mode, when you engage emotion to harness extra power, it comes at a cost of loss of fine motor control. So complex motion is very hard to maintain when you got that, fight or flight response to a 12.
Yeah. So
they don't want to engage that. They want to calm themselves to then pull huge amounts of weight and put it overhead. So it's a completely different mechanism. And the same thing happens in fighting. If you start getting emotion, how many times you see this where people get into somebody's mind? What does it mean when I got into my opponent's mind? It means that I own a little piece of his emotional state. Yep. I have a little territory marked in there. And if you allow people to have that territory, you're not operating at 100%. Your thoughts are not going to be clear. So you can harness that emotion. The best people will be able to harness that emotion. I don't like the fighter that I'm going to face, so I'm going to train harder. Okay, but at the time of confrontation, they are able to become clinical in their application of violence. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to achieve. That takes a lot of control. Those are the best people out there, but you want to separate the emotion. Oh, I'm nervous in fighting. Throw up in the locker room. There are examples of UFC champions that would throw up before every single fight. But that's how they dealt with. There has to be a stop mechanism in there where you let it all go and then you come in. And it varies from athlete to athlete. but you definitely don't want them walking in there angry
Right.
at anything, angry at themselves, angry at the opponent, angry at the world. Not good. They have to be clear-minded. So the application of violence is clinical at that level when we're talking, especially mixed martial arts.
Man, that's so good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Well, I hate to say that we're coming close to the end of our time. If you guys are interested, you're in the southern Minnesota area, check out mrjja.com.
Yes, mrjja.com. I'm on Instagram at Mario Roberto JJ, and that's my just personal Instagram. So a couple of my rants in there too. So if you're into the mental toughness stuff, I'm into it as well. And always challenge yourself. I think my message would be, don't take anything for granted in your life.
Yep.
Stop whining. There are two types of people. You want to be a doer. You don't want to be a complainer. You can sit with, there are some people that get hardship and they will rise that to heights that you couldn't imagine. Every success story that we love is of somebody that made it through the hardest possible path. It's not the guy that received it on a platter. And yet when we look at our own lives, we want the platter version. Give me the prize. That's not congruent, right? So you want to make sure that you are operating with welcoming every single piece of hardship as an opportunity to look at things instead of challenges as opportunities. And when you take a vacation, force yourself to do something that's different. Go challenge yourself. Don't sit by a beach sipping on a margarita, man. How old? That gets old, man.
Right.
So go do something, grow.
Yeah.
And thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and seeing you after all these years,
Thanks, Mario, again. It was great to catch up.
Thank you. Appreciate it, James.
And to our listeners, I would love to connect and hear your journeys. So reach out to us at www.bullishdrive.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. And always remember, it starts with you and your destiny is waiting. Peace.